Hey Reddit, I'm not sure if anyone will believe me, but I need to get this off my chest. This story has been eating at me for weeks now, and I feel like the only way to deal with it is to share it. You've probably heard warnings about the dark web, how it's not just memes and edgy forums, but a place where truly messed up things happen. I used to brush those off. It's all exaggerated, I told myself. Yeah, I was wrong. Let me back up a bit. My name's Alex. I'm a pretty average guy in my mid-20s, living in a small apartment in Chicago. My life revolves around my tech job, late-night gaming sessions, and scrolling through TikTok until I fall asleep. Not exactly the type of person who seeks out danger, right? But a couple of weeks ago, I got bored, like dangerously bored. My buddy Sean had always talked about the dark web like it was some kind of forbidden playground, messed up, but cool in a weird way. One night, I decided to check it out. Bad decision. I used a Tor browser, downloaded all the necessary stuff, thank you, Reddit tutorials, and set up a VPN. I'm not going to give you step-by-step instructions because, trust me, you don't want to go there. I started browsing random forums and marketplaces. At first, it was just sketchy ads for counterfeit passports, drugs, and hacking services. It was creepy, sure, but it wasn't anything I hadn't expected. Then I found a link titled, "Mirrored Reality, Do You Know Your Doppelganger?" It stood out because it didn't look like the other links. No scary red font or flashing skull gifs, just plain text on a black background. My curiosity got the better of me. I clicked it. The page was simple. It asked me to upload a recent photo of myself, which was super sketchy. But again, I was bored, and I figured it was some kind of dumb prank. I grabbed a selfie from my Instagram, the one where I was at the Starbucks on Michigan Avenue, holding a pumpkin spice latte like a basic fall cliché, and uploaded it. That's when things started to feel wrong. The page refreshed, and a message appeared. Searching for your mirror. There was a loading bar that crawled across the screen for what felt like forever. Just when I was about to close the tab and call it a night, the page refreshed again, and a new photo popped up. It was me, or at least someone who looked exactly like me. Same face, same messy brown hair, even the same scar on my left eyebrow from when I fell off my bike as a kid. But there was something off. His expression wasn't mine. His eyes were cold, almost dead, like he was looking through the screen at me. And then I noticed the background of his photo. It wasn't Starbucks or a park or anything normal. It was a dimly lit room, walls streaked with what looked like rust, or maybe blood. I couldn't tell. Beneath the photo, a caption appeared. "Your mirror has been found. Do you want to connect?" At this point, I was freaked out, but I also thought maybe it was some kind of AI-generated image, like it pulled my photo and edited it to look creepier. That's a thing, right? I almost closed the browser, but then I remembered Sean's words. The dark web is only scary if you stop digging. I clicked, connect. Biggest mistake of my life. The screen changed to a live video feed. It was the same guy, my doppelganger, sitting in that creepy room. He was staring directly at the camera, not blinking, not moving. Then he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was wrong. Like he was excited to see me, but for all the wrong reasons. And then he spoke. "Hello, Alex." My stomach dropped. How did he know my name? I hadn't entered it anywhere. "You're probably wondering how this works," he said, his voice low and calm. "It's simple. I'm you, but I'm also not you. Think of me as the version of you that you keep buried. The part of you that's capable of anything." He leaned closer to the camera, and I swear I could see the glint of something shiny, a knife, in his hand. Do you ever wonder what it would feel like to let go? To stop pretending to be the good guy? I slammed my laptop shut. My heart was pounding, my palms were sweaty, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I told myself it was just some sick prank, maybe a deepfake or a hacker messing with me. But then my phone buzzed. I had a text. It was from an unknown number. "Running won't help, Alex. I'll see you soon." Okay, I'll admit it. When I got that text, I nearly threw my phone across the room. My brain was scrambling to figure out what the hell was happening. My first thought, Sean. He had to be behind this. He was the one who got me curious about the dark web in the first place, and it wouldn't be the first time he'd pulled some elaborate prank on me. But then I remembered, I hadn't told Sean I was even doing this. He didn't know. No one did. Still, I called him. It rang twice before he picked up. "Dude, what's up? It's like 2 a.m, he grumbled, his voice groggy. "Sean, this isn't funny. If you're messing with me, just admit it," I said, pacing my tiny apartment. My hands were shaking, and I could hear my voice cracking. "What are you talking about? Messing with what? You didn't send me a text just now from a random number?" There was a long pause. "Alex, I don't even know what you're talking about. You good?" That's when I knew this wasn't a prank. Sean wasn't the type to lie when he was half asleep. I muttered some excuse about a bad dream and hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time, the text still sitting there like a bad omen. My gut told me not to reply, so I didn't. Instead, I double-checked my door locks, shut every window, and tried to convince myself I was overreacting. But then I started noticing things. The first weird thing happened the next morning. I went to the Starbucks near my apartment. You know, my usual spot where the baristas know me by name. I needed caffeine, badly, and I figured being out in public would help me shake the creepy vibes. But as I walked in, I noticed something. A guy was sitting at a table by the window. He looked just like me. I stopped dead in my tracks. He was wearing a black hoodie, the hood pulled up just enough to partially hide his face, but I could see enough to know it was him, or me, or whatever, my doppelganger. He wasn't looking at me directly, but I could feel his eyes on me like he knew I was there. I thought about turning around and walking out, but the barista, Alyssa, the one who always jokes about how I'm keeping Starbucks in business, spotted me and waved. "Hey, Alex, pumpkin spice again," she called. I nodded awkwardly and stepped up to the counter, trying to act normal, but my mind was racing. I kept glancing over my shoulder at the guy, trying to figure out what his deal was. By the time I grabbed my drink and turned back around, he was gone. Just gone. No sign of him anywhere. The chair he'd been sitting in was still pulled out, though, like he'd left in a hurry. The second weird thing happened that night. I was scrolling through Instagram trying to distract myself when I saw a new account had tagged me in a post. The username was at @therealalex_13, and the profile picture was me, not a picture of me. It was the exact same selfie I'd uploaded to that creepy dark website, except now my face had been altered to look wrong. My eyes were blacked out and my smile was distorted, stretched unnaturally wide like something out of a horror movie. The caption? "We're connected now." I reported the account immediately, but by the time I refreshed the page, it was gone. Deleted. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart hammering in my chest. Who was doing this, and how the hell were they so good at it? The third weird thing was the email. It came a few hours later, just as I was trying to convince myself to go to bed. The subject line was blank, and the sender was just a string of random letters and numbers. I almost deleted it without opening it, but something made me pause. The email had no text, just an attachment, a video file. I hesitated for a long time before clicking it. When it opened, I immediately regretted it. The video was grainy, like it had been recorded on an old security camera, but it was clear enough to see what was happening. It showed a man walking through a dark alley, his face obscured by the hood of his jacket. But then he turned toward the camera, and I felt my stomach drop. It was him, the guy from Starbucks, my doppelganger. He smiled at the camera, that same twisted smile, then turned back around. The video cut to a new angle, this time showing the same alley from above. I could see the man approaching someone, a woman, probably in her early 30s, walking alone. Before I could process what was happening, he lunged at her. The video ended. I slammed my laptop shut and pushed it away from me, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I felt like I was going to throw up. My phone buzzed again, and I almost didn't look, but curiosity got the better of me. It was another text from the same unknown number. See what I'm capable of? That was the moment I realized this wasn't just some online prank. Whoever, or whatever, this guy was, he was real. And he was dangerous. After that video, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that twisted version of myself lunging at the woman in the alley. I wanted to believe it was fake, a deep fake, some elaborate dark web troll, but something in my gut told me it wasn't. It felt too raw, too real. The worst part, I couldn't shake the idea that he was somewhere nearby, watching me. The first thing I did the next morning was call the cops. I didn't even know how to explain what was happening without sounding insane, but I had to try. I told the dispatcher about the video, the text messages, and the guy who looked exactly like me. I didn't mention the dark web. I figured that would only make me sound crazier. When an officer finally showed up at my apartment, I showed him the video and the text. He frowned, leaning in closer to my laptop screen. "You said this guy looks like you?" he asked, his tone skeptical. "Yes, exactly like me. I swear it's not me in the video." The officer leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. "You said you got this off some random website?" "No," I said quickly. "He sent it to me. I don't know who he is or how he got my number." The officer sighed. "Look, it's not uncommon for scammers to use software to mess with people's faces. Could be some AI-generated nonsense, trying to get you to pay for something." I wanted to scream. "This isn't a scam. He knows where I am. He was at my Starbucks yesterday. He's stalking me." The officer didn't look convinced, but he nodded anyway. "I'll file a report, but there's not much we can do unless he's made an explicit threat." "Explicit threat?" "He sent me a video of himself attacking someone. I didn't say that, though. I could already tell he thought I was losing it." He left with a shrug and call us if anything else happens. That was it. I was on my own. Later that day, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. Staying cooped up in my apartment was driving me crazy, and I figured being out in public would be safer. The streets were crowded. It was a sunny afternoon in Chicago, and people were out shopping, grabbing lunch, living their normal, non-horrifying lives. I envied them. I wandered aimlessly, ending up at Millennium Park. The familiar sight of the Bean, yeah, I know it's called Cloudgate, but come on, everyone calls it the Bean, was oddly comforting. I stood there for a while, watching tourists take selfies and kids chase each other around. For the first time in days, I felt a little normal, but then I saw him. He was standing across the park, leaning casually against a tree. Same black hoodie, same dead-eyed stare. It was him, my doppelganger. He wasn't even trying to hide. Our eyes met and he smiled, not the friendly kind of smile, the kind that made my stomach twist into knots. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought about calling out to him, demanding to know what the hell he wanted, but something in his expression stopped me. It was like he was daring me to come closer, to confront him. Instead, I turned and started walking the other way, trying to lose myself in the crowd. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting him to be right behind me, but he wasn't. When I finally stopped to catch my breath, I realized I was standing in front of a McDonald's. Without thinking, I went inside. It was crowded and noisy, families, teens, a couple of guys in suits. The chaos made me feel safer. I found a corner table where I could keep an eye on the door and ordered a coffee just to have an excuse to stay. For a while, nothing happened. I started to think I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe it wasn't even him in the park. Maybe it was just someone who happened to look like me. But then my phone buzzed. It was another text. This one was different. It wasn't a threat or a creepy message. It was a photo of me sitting right there in the McDonald's, staring at my phone like an idiot. The angle was perfect, taken from across the room. My head snapped up, my eyes scanning the tables around me. That's when I saw him. He was sitting 3 tables away, his phone in his hand, smirking at me. He wasn't even trying to hide it. My chest tightened, and I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but my throat felt like it was closing up. I stood up, my hands trembling. He stayed where he was, just watching me, that sick grin never leaving his face. It felt like time had stopped. Everyone else in the McDonald's went on with their lives, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding right in front of them. I bolted. I didn't even grab my coffee. I ran out the door, weaving through the crowds on the sidewalk, trying to put as much distance as possible between us. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't stop until I was blocks away. When I finally made it back to my apartment, I locked the door behind me and collapsed onto the couch. My mind was spinning. What the hell was this guy's endgame? Why did he look like me? Why was he playing these games? And then it hit me. The video, the alley, the woman. I grabbed my laptop and started Googling, trying to find any news about a recent attack. It didn't take long. I found a story from 2 days ago. Woman assaulted in West Loop Alley, suspect at large. The details matched the video perfectly. My stomach churned as I scrolled through the article. Then I saw it. A grainy photo of the suspect taken from a security camera. It was me, or him, or us. That night I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every shadow in my apartment felt like it was moving. Every creak in the floorboards made my heart leap. The news article was burned into my brain. Suspect at large. And the photo, grainy, but undeniably my face, was proof that this wasn't just some elaborate prank. My doppelganger was real, and he was framing me. I stayed glued to my laptop, trying to piece things together. I combed through forums, Reddit threads, and even conspiracy websites, looking for any mention of something like this. Doppelgangers, identity theft, creepy dark web experiments. Most of it was junk, stories about shape-shifting demons, government cloning programs, and stuff that sounded more like bad sci-fi than real life. But then I found a thread on an obscure subreddit, r/glitch in the Matrix. The post was titled, "Ever meet someone who looks just like you, but they're not you?" It was a mix of eerie personal accounts and wild theories, but one comment stood out. It read, "They call it a mirror link. The dark web has places where people can buy or trade identities. It's not just about stealing your info, it's about becoming you. If someone buys your link, they're your shadow now. They can do anything in your name, and no one will ever believe you're not the one doing it." I stared at the screen, my skin crawling. Could this be what was happening to me? Had someone bought my mirror link? The whole thing sounded insane, but after what I'd seen, I couldn't dismiss it. I felt like I was spiraling into some kind of twisted rabbit hole with no way out. Then, at 3:42 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It was another text from the same unknown number. This time, it wasn't a message or a photo, it was a location pin. The address wasn't far, maybe a 20-minute drive from my apartment. A smart person would have ignored it, blocked the number and called the police. But by that point, fear had turned into something else. Anger, frustration. I needed answers. If this guy wanted to mess with me, fine, I'd confront him myself. I grabbed my keys, threw on a jacket, and left. The address led me to an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, in a part of town I'd normally avoid. The building was massive and crumbling, its windows boarded up, the metal doors covered in graffiti. The whole place reeked of abandonment and danger. As I approached, I noticed something strange. The front door was slightly ajar, and a faint light was flickering inside. It felt like a trap, because, let's be real, it probably was, but I couldn't turn back. Not now. My curiosity had dragged me this far, and I wasn't leaving without answers. The inside of the warehouse was just as eerie as the outside. The flickering light came from an old TV sitting on a metal table in the middle of the room. Static crackled on the screen, but there was something else, a figure, barely visible through the distortion. It was him, my doppelganger. As I stepped closer, the static cleared, and I saw him more clearly. He was sitting in the same dark room I'd seen in the photo on the dark web, the one with the blood-streaked walls. He leaned toward the camera, his expression calm but unnervingly cold. "Glad you could make it," he said, his voice crackling through the speakers. It was like hearing my own voice, but colder, hollow. "I've been waiting." "What the hell do you want from me?" I demanded. My voice echoed through the empty warehouse, but it sounded small, almost desperate. He smiled. "I already told you, we're connected now. You opened the door, Alex, you let me in. And now, I'm you." "You're not me," I snapped. "You're some sick freak trying to ruin my life?" His smile widened and he tilted his head like he was amused. "Oh, Alex, I don't need to ruin your life. You're doing that just fine on your own." I clenched my fists, my blood boiling. "Why are you doing this? Why me?" His expression darkened. "Because you're weak. You pretend to be the good guy, but we both know the truth. You've thought about it, haven't you? What it would feel like to hurt someone, to stop holding back." My stomach churned. "You're insane." He laughed, a chilling, hollow sound that echoed through the warehouse. "Maybe, but you can't stop me. No one can. When they look for the monster, they'll see your face, your fingerprints, your name. And you know what the best part is? You invited me in, you uploaded your picture, you gave me a mirror." I took a step back, my mind racing. This wasn't just about identity theft. This was something deeper, darker. The TV screen flickered again, and the image changed. It was another video. This time, it showed my apartment building. The camera panned slowly, stopping at my window. My stomach dropped as I realized the footage was live. And then I saw him. He was standing outside my window, staring directly into the camera, holding something in his hand, a knife. My legs went numb as I stared at the screen. The live feed of my apartment felt like a nightmare made real. There he was, my doppelganger, outside my window, clutching a knife in one hand and waving at the camera with the other. The wave wasn't friendly. It was slow and deliberate, like he was savoring the fear he knew I was feeling. I bolted for the exit. My heart was pounding so hard, it drowned out the sound of my footsteps echoing in the warehouse. I didn't think, I just ran. I had to get back to my apartment before he could do anything, before he could hurt anyone. The drive back was a blur. Chicago's streets, normally alive even in the dead of night, felt like they'd emptied out just for me. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every shadow on the sidewalk made my paranoia spike. By the time I pulled up to my building, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The street outside was eerily quiet. I parked a block away and sprinted toward the building, my keys jangling in my pocket. My apartment was on the third floor, and the stairwell felt like it stretched forever. Each step creaked under my weight, the sound amplified by the silence around me. When I reached my door, I stopped. It was open. Not wide open, just slightly ajar. The kind of subtle detail that screams, "Something's wrong." I pushed it open slowly, my breath hitching in my throat. The living room was dark, lit only by the glow of my laptop screen. It was still on the coffee table, the video feed from the warehouse frozen on the image of my doppelganger standing outside my window. But he wasn't there now. The window was closed, the curtains drawn. The room was deadly quiet, like the air had been sucked out. I stepped inside, my heart hammering in my chest, and called out, "Who's there?" No response. I moved cautiously through the apartment, checking every room, every closet, even under the bed. Nothing. It was like he'd vanished. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. My skin prickled, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. When I circled back to the living room, I froze. There, on the wall above the couch, was a message scrawled in what looked like red spray paint, or something worse. "You can't hide from yourself." My stomach churned and my mind raced. How had he gotten in? I'd locked the door, I'd checked every window, but then I remembered the video. He'd been outside my window, that meant he'd been inside my building. He wasn't just stalking me, he was toying with me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I nearly dropped it as I pulled it out. It was another text from the unknown number. "I'm closer than you think." I spun around, my eyes darting to every corner of the room. That's when I saw it. A figure reflected in the dark screen of my TV. He was standing in the hallway behind me, partially hidden in the shadows. My blood turned to ice. I whipped around and there he was. My doppelganger. Same face, same body, but the way he carried himself was all wrong. He was slouched, his head tilted slightly to the side, like a predator sizing up its prey. The knife in his hand gleamed in the dim light. "Why?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "What do you want from me?" He grinned, that same twisted smile that haunted me in my nightmares. "I told you, Alex, we're connected now. You let me in, and now I'm here to stay." I backed away slowly, my mind racing for a plan. "You can't just take my life," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "People will know the difference." He laughed, a low, guttural sound that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, they won't. You've made it so easy for me. The videos, the texts. You've already made yourself look paranoid, unstable. By the time I'm done, they'll think you're the monster." He lunged. I dove out of the way just in time, crashing into the coffee table. Pain shot through my arm, but adrenaline kept me moving. He swung the knife again, narrowly missing me. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the nearest thing I could find, a lamp, and swung it at him. It shattered against his shoulder, but he barely flinched. "You can't fight me," he snarled. "I'm you. You know how this ends." I didn't respond. I bolted for the door, my bare feet slipping on the hardwood floor. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps heavy and relentless. I made it to the hallway and started pounding on my neighbor's door. "Help! Someone help!" I shouted. The door didn't open, but lights flicked on inside. I could hear movement, someone calling 911, I hoped. I turned just in time to see him charging at me again. I ducked, and he stumbled, his knife scraping against the wall. I didn't wait for him to recover. I ran down the stairwell, my lungs burning with every step. When I burst out onto the street, I didn't stop. I kept running, the cold night air stinging my skin. I don't know how far I ran, but eventually I collapsed on a bench outside a 24-hour diner. I was shaking so badly I could barely catch my breath. My phone was still in my pocket, and I pulled it out to call the police. But there was another text waiting for me. "You can't run forever, Alex. I'll always be with you." I dropped the phone, my hands trembling. I looked around the empty street, half expecting to see him lurking in the shadows. But there was nothing, just silence. It's been 3 days since that night. The police didn't believe me when I told them what happened. They think the attack was random, that I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. They don't believe me about the doppelganger, or the texts, or the video, and honestly, I don't blame them. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe me either. But I know he's still out there, watching, waiting. Sometimes I see him in the reflection of a store window or the corner of my eye on the subway. I never get a good look, but I know it's him. He's not done with me. Not yet. And the scariest part, I don't think I'll ever be able to tell where he ends and I begin.